You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Owen.
I'm Liam.
I'm Savage.
And I'm Scarr.
And today we ask the question of why aren't they running away yet? Fighting to the death when the bad guys won't run. Liam, why don't the bad guys run?
Because we don't want to have to deal with what to do with them afterwards. Really is the number one thing. Like, you know, what do they do? Do they execute them? You know, you're in the middle of the wilderness. You hand them over to the lawful authorities. Is this like Batman? Are they going to get thrown up in Arkham Asylum and they'll be out again next week causing terror again? You know, it opens up a whole thing of what do you do with these people after they're captured alive, you know? Now, it can well be that the party takes them alive and, you know, it's Shadowrun or whatever. You're just doing a job, you're going in to get some tech or something like that, and it's nothing personal, and you'll just tie them up and go, right, good luck to you, we're out. And out you go. Maybe you'll have developed a lifetime enemy, or maybe they'll go, you know what, okay, well, that was a job, and they could have killed me, but they were professionals and let me be, so, you know, I'm not going to pursue them, I'll pursue whoever hired them. But in general, in most adventuring, you know, if you somehow capture the Lich is going to die. And if you've got a paladin in the party, it's just complicated as well, because the paladin's going to have problems with executing people, whereas if your party's all a bunch of various degrees of murder hobo, they're going to be like, yeah, let's just kill them. You know, it generally, that's why they fight to the death. It's just, you don't want to deal with the fallout after.
Yeah, it's
good call.
It's definitely something that more experienced everybody tends to default to, because I seem to recall early in my gaming career, people getting captured and captives getting taken and prisoners. It's always hassle. It's not clean. Much better that there's bodies and funerals all around. So it's everyone understands that we put them up, we put them down, and it helps if they're non-human. I mean, they don't deserve to live, that kind of thing. I obviously come from a very... No, it's not. No, it's not. It's speciest. And I'm all about speciesism.
Look,
that's why I don't eat my own.
Look at Pathfinder 2. Goblins are now people, and hobgoblins are people, and I think kobolds as well are people too, you know?
Hell, even gnolls are people now.
Lies!
Aren't they slavers?
God damn it.
Many of them are slavers. Not all of them are slavers. Not everybody's a slaver. Bunch of people are slavers, but not everybody.
The predominant economy of null society is slavery. Doesn't mean they're all bad.
To be slavers, you have to take prisoners. So clearly those guys aren't fighting by the same rules.
Yeah, we're not slavers. We've never left anyone alive after we've rolled into a place.
But it is interesting, I think, to gauge this idea as it's like you can't. This idea that like that there's no way to engage with a group of belligerents other than a death is sort of it. I'm not saying we have a perfect solution of forcing everyone who ever plays D&D to suddenly become very conscientious of the Geneva Conventions and or ransoming techniques. But it is, I think, an interesting thing to develop. Is it's like, because we've, like, human society has had these issues for, thousands of years. We've had solutions to them. Not all of them grim, and some of them do involve, the person just getting their throat slit. But a lot of times, like, even in brutal medieval warfare, they just let them get away. Just took the commanders prisoner, would be a thing, and then you could say ransom back the commanders to their houses. A process which could take months, of course, but potentially lots of good reward there.
I will say that RPG's presentation tactical situation tends to be very different to that of a medieval battlefield. You're usually breaking into someone's house or fortress and taking them out room by room. You don't want extraneous people behind you, maybe working loose of their bonds, maybe going to raise the alarm. So it's much more like a commando team making its way through a secure facility and basically dead is easily the best status condition for dealing with those people. Like that's the actual reason why often players are like, well, let's just everyone behind us, because we don't need to deal with that. I think we don't need alarms.
I think as well where the commando team kind of comes in as well is that typically I think most of your adventuring parties, regardless of genre, are generally fairly lone operators. There'll be some types of campaigns where you're working for the Watch or on behalf of the Watch, and you've got a whole organization and stuff behind you, whereby if you take prisoners, they could then look after them. But in most games, the party's usually out in the wilderness or out in the wilds of space, and they don't have anything to back them up. And the laundry rig will only hold so many prisoners.
Also, if you're working for a police force, you probably get asked questions like, you went in there to bust those drug dealers, yes. There's 140 dead people here. 80 of them have their throats slit with your knife. What the hell happened?
Hey, look, Dread is a great movie, and that has a high body count.
It does.
Those people were all lawfully and judiciously executed.
They all came right at him. He feared for his life. I was thinking actually of two scenes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe in relation to this. The first one was in Iron Man 3, where Tony Stark is escaping from his captivity, and he takes down all but one of the bad guys, and that guy just drops his gun and goes, seriously, I don't even like working here, they're so weird, and runs away. And that's the last you see of that character, so he just exunts from the scene. So as a GM, you are free to occasionally have an NPC do that. I was here for the money, guys. I do not want to fight. And maybe the players will show mercy in those set of circumstances. Maybe not, but maybe they will show mercy in those set of circumstances. The second one is in spoilers for Captain America the Winter Soldier. There's a bit where there's a fight and a bunch of bad guys where super soldiers are fighting with the main protagonist, and they kill the new Captain America's sidekick, Battlestar. And then they all run away, and he chases down after one of them. And your man's like, no, I give up. And Captain America kills him with a shield. Everyone's like, oh, the scary music plays. And I'm like, okay. What about all those people, like 2 episodes ago, those helicopters that Falcon blew up? Were those people just not there to go, no? That was bad? Because he did it up close? That's when it was murder? When he just blew up the vehicle? That's just, boom, big explosion. It's all fine. Is it only bad when it's up close?
Yeah, comic book genre, I think, suffers in general. Like, I think I didn't like the Arrow show, but like in the first episode, I think he arrows his way through the guy's entire security force, and then gets to the point, and then he's like, "I don't kill people for the drug kingpin," and it's like, well, you just like arrowed your way through the entire security force, and those arrows got penetration and came out the far side on some of them.
That one
you
guy
just don't
blew
kill
up.
Important people.
Well, look, my contention is that, genre tropes aside, I'm pretty sure players have never seen a movie or a video game or read a book, because if they did, they'd know that when you're mano a mano against a similarly sort of sized group, and then a bigger threat shows up. I've pulled this one a couple of times to GM, and I've always been a bit disappointed because my players just went, right, well, we'll kill the people we were killing a moment ago, and then we'll deal with the big threat. It's like, you've never seen Kong versus Godzilla? Or anything? Like, what the is wrong with you people? So, why do the bad guys fight to death? Because the GM has probably been playing with this group for a while and knows that it doesn't matter what incentives you offer for anything. It's going to be a clean sweep of the board every time, because you're dealing with a bunch of tactic nard murder hobos. Tactic nard? Yeah, I like that one. It's a frustrating style of play that exists everywhere, but especially in D&D. But especially in D&D, as you pointed out earlier, Liam, the more closer to civilization your game takes place, the more players do tend to think about the consequences. I guess as a GM, you should probably indicate that there's at least a few people there who either would be more useful to you alive than dead, or have incentives for leaving before the fight is clean sweep of the board.
Yeah, I think we'll probably come back to people running away later. That's something I think we're going to have to go into detail. But I do want to go back to this idea of we're assuming, essentially, the starting that the monsters have either surrendered, or your dying mechanics in your game are such that 50% of them didn't die when they're dropped and now need to be tied up or throat slit. But would there not be some incentive, depending on your setup, for them to be used as a resource? I think that possibly the thing is just like right now, most of these monsters are described as a liability, as it were, because they're going to wake up, come behind us, and stab us in the back. But if you were to go back to maybe classic Mega Dungeon, well, maybe those are useful prisoners. Maybe you can ransom them back to the Goblin King for a couple of coppers. Or maybe you can give them as prisoners to the Orc faction across the corridor to give them intel in their ongoing war over three dusty corridors and a room with 5 copies.
We're back into our slave trading.
Well,
the problem is here, Shane, that typically players will find uses for resources like that might get a little bit intense. So it might be like, hey, I think the strap's in this corridor. All right, Goblin number 1, you're on the way first out here. I'm poking you with this 10-foot spear. Away you go. Oh, yep, he's messily dead. Bring me up the next one. And we'll advance down the corridor this way. The second one is when you get into stuff like blood magic, and you gotta be, the second that starts happening, you're like, cool, so I can sack 3 creatures and get a first level spell slot back? How much for a 4th? 2. Okay, cool, I can do that. Stack them up, lads, stack them up. It'd be really much easier to carry babies than it would be to bring around full-size people. So next time we see a clutch, right, I want you to bundle them up. Maybe some crude sort of feeding mechanism. We'll just keep them ticking over until I need... Like, that's the kind of stuff you'll get into with the real, as Mick said, tactinards,
Yeah.
That's how the real guys will get into it.
And if one of these sons of guns ever has a rush of conscience to the head and says, why did they always fight to the death? You've got a reputation, Sunshine. Leave no village unrazed. Yeah, they figure their only hope here is to fight you until either they're dead or you are. So, that's PR for you. That's your brand. If you don't like it, change your tactics.
Now,
I really don't like players today.
Let's think about why. Some good examples for a GM. When bad guys would fight to the death or not. Like, for example, undead. Mindless undead.
Yeah.
Are they going to fight to the death?
Absolutely.
Yes, because
that's why everyone loves them.
Because they're programmed to do a particular job. Like, same for robots, same for any kind of mindless-ish opposition, or opposition that doesn't particularly care about the individual constituent parts. Like, if you've got, like, a hive mind, and you're trying to break into the Queen's lair, and the drones are hurling themselves at you, everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense. They're a hive mind. The Queen's the only one that actually really matters because she's the continuance of the hive. So the rest of it are just, disposable bits. So that's the kind of thing where you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. What other situations? Animals, for example, are mostly going to run away from a fight. Mostly. When aren't they?
Protected
or young.
Den.
Or cornered, yeah.
Offspring or young. Yeah, offspring young
Trapped.
or no way to get out. So if you have an animal cornered in a room, like that could be a challenge for a bunch of players, where you could have put actually a really dangerous animal, like one with the CR well above them, but not interested in fighting. Got food, is eaten already, so if you hit it with something, it may just run away. But if you're blocking the only door out of the room, it's going to go through you or it's going to fight you. So you can do kind of alternate-ish encounters like that by going, actually, this thing does not want to fight to the death. Like most predators, also lions fight to the death. No! Lions hit you, then run away. If lions are hungry, they'll break your neck and then eat you. But if you're a bunch of hitting them, the lion's going to go, I'm out. I have no interest in this. I am not at home to getting injured fighting a bunch of lunatics.
The strangest one, I think, is Komodo dragons who will bite you and then follow you around for a week, waiting until you die from infection.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way with humans, but it works well with wildebeest and stuff.
Yeah,
not wildebeest, whatever, the buffalo, water buffalo.
Yeah. So what you can do is you can actually look at it and go, is there actually some way to look at the whole fighting to the death thing? And who will?
So fanatics.
Okay, cultists.
Yep, perfect.
Fanatics, your general lunatic. Like, often use the get out for the GM to avoid, well, let's not have these guys resist the plan. They fight to the death, and even if you talk to them, they refuse to tell you anything. Ha ha ha, they're crazy.
You can have a lot of fun with that.
I mean, that's where I was going to go next with this, is that I think that it's often laziness on the part of either the GM if they're making their own content, or module writers, because they don't want to have to deal with narratively what happens if these people are captured and might reveal the great plan or whatever. I know recently in the Warfare game I'm running, the guy's captured, like legit captured, took the penalties to knock a Skaven out, and the Empire at large doesn't believe in Skaven. So it's going to be massively complicated and derail the entire module if suddenly the entire game becomes, look, we have this live Skaven.
Malnourished bear.
And absolutely it could then be that guess what, Skaven hit squads are turning up to try and take that guy out and then take you out too because you're revealing their existence. But that then becomes what the campaign's about.
Yeah. You even had a big question about one of the other players asked, could he learn Queekish, which is the Skaven language? And you had to do a bunch of research down the track going, does this break the campaign if someone can speak Queekish?
Well, the fourth book wasn't out yet, which the fourth book largely was around the Skaven, so it could have had a massive impact. And I was like, well, and if they have a live Skaven there, sure, you can probably learn a bit of Queekish off them. But it massively derailing,
So the thing I like about fanatics, and I guess Skaven count as fanatics, but if we're taking kind of baseline human fanatics, say Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is the best Indiana Jones movie, just saying. Your fanatics there are kind of enthralled to something that is more or less kind of fanatic cult mind control type affair. So that's always a good reason for fanatics to fight to the death. But the one I really like is what I think of as just as planned. So if there is some sort of crazy ritual that requires lots and lots of death or sacrifice, think Khorne or Slaanesh or something like that doing some Blood Moon stuff, then your players, if they cotton on, they're actually in a position where the fanatics are throwing themselves at them because it is the will of their dark god, and that is fueling a ritual that the players are desperately trying to stop. And now you've got the problem that you're in horde mode, but you're trying to figure out how to not kill all of these people who, through compulsion or belief, are throwing themselves on your swords. So you can have a lot of fun there with the old fight to the death trope.
And that can be as well, even internal party members or NPCs. If a spell like confusion or something goes off in an area, and suddenly everybody is attacking each other, and once it all wears off, they'll be perfectly rational people again. But for that duration, they can be incredibly dangerous. What do you do? What do you do then that the NPC Baron or whatever, who's actually quite important to you, is going bananas trying to kill everybody and will fight to the death because they're under this compulsion? I have a game tomorrow that we have exactly that problem. Our archer fighter guy, who I just gave a necklace of fireballs to, has just gone, "You're all out to get me, aren't you?" There's some demon stuff going on. I'm not really clear on the details. Sorry to my GM. But yeah, the whole last of this week, the rest of the party been like, what do we do about Maria, as it were? How do you solve a problem like Maria? Because they've got a shining sword, a necklace of fireballs, a familiar, and they're bloody good at the bow. And we don't know if they're going to fight to the death or not. And we don't really want to. So yeah, lots of... And necklace of fireballs, no joke. Stop giving them out. In fact, this isn't the GM's fault, but module writers, stop putting necklace of fireballs in your low level
campaign. It is because you're only hurting yourselves and everybody else.
Oh, they're great. They're purely there because people enjoy bad guys. You know, the fighter goes up and charges the bad guy, and the wizard drops a fireball, so the area of effect just clips the bad guy. Got bad guy with a necklace of fireballs, failed saved, boom, the fighter gets exploded as well. It's a classic gag.
He'd be fine. He's got plenty of hit points.
Like, one of the things is, like, if you're fighting against bad guys who genuinely are willing to die to kill you, there's a whole range of tactical options potentially available to that crew, which can make a fight interesting.
Are we?
Like, if guys run up right next to you and pull the pin on their grenade,
yep,
that's a whole different set of challenges. Or like run up with a string of grenades on them and pull all the pins out at once.
Or necklace of fireballs. It's functionally the same
or
thing.
basically attempt at jump off cliffs and try to push you off with them. Or like whip around you, jump off a cliff.
Yeah,
like genuinely suicidal guys willing to do crazy stuff. Like the guy turns around with a power axe and starts hacking away at the reactor.
Yeah.
Like, you could be like, oh my god,
yeah,
what is going on? Are these guys are willing to die to kill you?
These are great ideas.
This is not they're fighting to the death. This is they will do self-destructive, insane things. Like the guy who you try to take him out of the thing, he pulls out the gun on the airliner and starts firing directly at the window.
What do you do? So that's it.
I thought you were going to say something relatively benign, like they'll step into a flank to get a flank. You're going for a whole different level of hardcore here.
Yeah, I like this.
And that's the kind of thing where you can basically re-establish how inhuman or like evil this opposition is for whatever reason. Maybe this is a mind controller just using people against you. Maybe this is basically some sort of curse or something. Like if you're taking, like, let's say you basically sicked like you took one of the movies like The Grudge or something and you sicked that on your players, and there was something like that spirit possessing people and using them to just run things into them. Like imagine players were on the street and then there's this possessing spirit, and what it did was it possessed a truck and drove the truck at them. And then it possessed another truck and drove the truck at them. And you realize the third truck is full of gasoline.
And orphans.
And you're like, yeah, like people are just running at you and basically jumping on you and basically strapping on. What do? You're like, you can make these situations which are very scary for the players, very tense, by basically going, what would be really bad? What would be unthinkably bad to happen? Let's do that. And as a sort of a challenge, like I want to sell that this bad guy's dangerous. This is how I'm doing it. You know?
Really, I think we should change the title of the episode to Fighting to the Death. You're not doing it hard or well enough. You can really go real nuts. You get your Al-Qaeda on and you can really give your players a hard time. We've gone to dark places now.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I think like the ultimate solution is to ask players to not indulge in power fantasy and to treat the creatures that they face as real people, and that's probably more mental overhead than the average party of people playing on a Saturday night who just want to unwind is willing to put in. But like, there's other logistics, things to think about. Like mechanics can be the result of this behavior before. I have developed a big bugbear for the attack of opportunity as a mechanic, because I don't think people have thought about how much it changes behavior, because like no one can run away. Like if you're on hit points low enough that you want to run away, your hit points low enough that attempting to run away will kill you.
It's another withdraw action. Does that not get you around that?
Yeah, but then you only move one move action, and they just run up the next turn and hit you again. It's
True,
just like,
well, it's the stop go nature of any turn based sort of system that has that problem, in that withdrawal is almost possible without special effects.
Yeah.
It's
Pathfinder 2nd edition made a choice to restrict attacks of opportunity to the tank classes effectively. So fighter gets it as standard, and then
it uses your reaction for the turn as well.
Yeah, and our barbarian can pick it up as an option. and Monk get a version of it if they wanted. So basically, it's a way effectively to tie someone up melee. Because if you don't do that, your tanks can't make anybody hit them. Or they can't make anyone stay engaged with them rather than moving down and hitting the squishy wizard. Other games like Woofrup doesn't have engagement as an automatic. Engagement only happens after you make an attack. So if someone is prepared to run far enough away from you, you actually can't move up and engage them.
They have to
if they're running away,
very skilled to do it, or have more advantage. And if you're in generally, if you're in a position of losing a fight, you're typically not swimming in an advantage, because you just spend it to lose your engaged status and then Scarper. It's quite difficult to run away in Warfrup. It generally doesn't happen.
Yeah, so that's if you want a situation where bad guys run away, you probably need to also put a situation where the PCs can run away. So see previous episode about PCs running away, and so that's one thing. Another is, and again, this is all me thinking back to coming in at the 3.0, 3.5 era, where this kind of kill 'em all behavior just seemed to really get baked into the game. Is that even if someone does break away for a fight and start running, ranged attacks are pretty strong in most games, and you can just shoot them in the back. And very few people are going to do the whole paladin, it is dishonorable to shoot a man in the back sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I know we were saying that gaming isn't like medieval combat, but if you think about it in most medieval combat, armies typically didn't take most of their casualties in the battle. Armies took most of their casualties once they were broken and they were trying to withdraw, or if they were being forced to withdraw. That's generally when the damage was done, and an awful lot of it was done by cavalry. That's why cavalry was typically so devastating. Was you can maneuver around, you can clip at the edges and stuff, but then once the rout happens, that's where the damage happens. So I think it is a little naive for people to be going, oh well, I wouldn't shoot them in the back, because that's an awful lot of how it happened,
Well, yeah, and all moral codes tend to disintegrate on contact with the enemy, as seen by all of these players do.
Isn't the route often a lot of kills you getting trampled by other people?
It can be as well, yeah.
Rather than deliberately, because I know they did a bunch of research about how hard it is to get people to actually shoot other people, and that often people kind of pull their shots or pull their blows at the last second to avoid really killing somebody. And that's why medieval warfare was a lot of pushing and shoving and kind of poking and then but when one side runs, that's where most of the death happens. That if your organised phalanx is like, you get hurt, but you don't get killed most of the time. It's when you break and run, that's your problem. So the whole thing became, okay, nobody ever run. We organise the battlefield so that our blocks do not run. They have rally points, they have all this other stuff to hold together. Do not run, because running is where you get killed. And that's actually an interesting problem when you start transitioning into later modes of warfare, where stuff is much more fatal from afar, and it was easier to get people to kind of, hurt other people.
Flamethrowers save lives.
Except the people they're pointed at, and generally the people who are wearing them.
Or who are standing near them when that guy gets shot.
Just anywhere around them is... But outside of the circumference of flamethrowiness, it's pretty safe. It's a good time. Just going back to the mechanics side of things, it does occur to me that some systems, some role-playing game systems, do support the kind of the morale breaking or the fight going out of you kind of aspect of all this, and then some don't. I mean, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but whatever version of Woofrup there is now still has a willpower or a cool stat or something like that, doesn't it? That you can measure.
Yeah, and often encounters will have, if these guys take X amount of casualties, gives them a cool check. But given how low people's cool often is, that's often just a straight away, at least half these guys are going to break.
Which kind of makes sense. We just watched a quarter of our mates get killed. Let's be somewhere else. So oftentimes you might find yourself in a game where if there isn't any mechanical support for the idea of running away in terms of things like morale checks or a wisdom saves, whatever, then it's probably not going to occur to the GM or to players that it's an option, because it isn't explicitly stated that it's kind of a thing. I think
there can often be mechanical supports for it as well. something that I've been doing in Warfrup as well is this isn't part of the base system, but as you get exposed to nasty and weird stuff, you can get corruption points. One thing I've been doing when the party's been going down a particular end that I don't want them to go down, or let's say where they're trying to capture a guy who I just don't want to have to deal with these guys capturing this guy, and then okay, just whisper to player, we'll buy a corruption point back if you don't take this guy using non-lethal means. We'll buy a corruption point back if you let this guy go. And if you're in a very adversarial relationship with your party, that can be bad because they'll assume that you are doing that to then screw them. But if you're really doing it to kind of keep the narrative flowing, it can work out quite well.
I do think that there's something to be said for these kinds of morale mechanics, but I worry that they have this sort of hidden price that is possibly why they've fallen out of favor, and that's the GM mental overhead of, I was supposed to roll morale 2 turns ago. Whoops. I was supposed to roll the reaction roll before rolling initiative. They were, half of them were killed before we ever checked whether they liked the party or not. These kinds of things are easy to forget in the moment if you don't have them front and center. And this is possibly, I know GM screens are one of those weird things where their apparent function of hiding dice rolls, I don't think is actually their real benefit. It's the fact that they put the check to see if the monster is a bad guy first table. It might be, and other reminders like that, maybe more their actual function to keep important rules in front of a GM.
A cheat sheet, yeah.
I've always used them as a way to hide my drinking, but yeah, okay.
There's another topic first. 10 great uses for the GM screen.
Yeah, possibly.
Absolutely.
There's also the question of, if you have a mechanic for it, doesn't that take away from the GM's ability to choose whether or not this group of monsters is particularly brave or particularly cowardly?
No, I just don't use any rule I don't like. It's my game.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the thing going there.
But it's. I think if it's in there, it at least gives you the option to consider it. I mean, you should think about it anyways. But they don't run away. I think I'm gonna stick to my guns on this one. Why don't monsters why don't monsters or enemies whatever run away in role playing games? Because it is easier to have a kind of a binary they're alive or we're alive state at the end of a battle. You can buy manacles, but it's manacle management once you've got someone in them is a pain in the ass for a lot of people. It's not much like tracking ammo or food. Like, where are the prisoners? Yeah. What are we doing? You have to stay here so the orc doesn't eat the elf.
Yeah. You've got 20 rooms in this dungeon. How much time do you want to spend of your evening dealing with the fact you've got 3 guys you've got to tie up? That's kind of where it comes down to.
Alrighty. This is also, I guess the last thing I'll say on it is that, something the party's determined to do, friendly NPCs are an option. So if your party's inclined to having that, maybe in the first couple of rooms they encounter some prisoners themselves. And those prisoners will then be jailers for them.
I think this is a great question to consider in terms of all of the counter arguments. Maybe you're bounty hunters. Maybe dead isn't an option. You don't get paid. GM can have a lot of fun with it. Players should probably consider the question, but it's definitely one for the GMs to have a firm handle on in any given encounter. Will they run away or not, and why not? Because your murder hobos will turn around at some point and go, everyone we fight it fights to the death. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Well, you guys fight to the death. You've never run away. So you're going to need to have a good answer for them.
And also be aware of... Make sure that people, if you want someone to run away, make sure they actually have an escape plan. Make sure they have, a lair to go back to, or a hidey hole to hide in, or a back door to slip out of. Think about these things. It might improve your dungeon design if you think of where all the bits are going to go.
I would say make it a mechanical way to escape as opposed to and they just escape, because that players just feel so cheated by that.
Yeah. You'd be shocked at the number of Paizo dungeons that had a bad guy who could turn into geisha's form and a vent with basically a very, very fine metal bars that he could escape through. And it's like, you do realise that spell takes a minute to take effect. Wait, what?
The thing about not hand waving it is it goes back to the your turn, my turn problem. I've run scenarios where there's one particular scenario where I had two different antagonists who were trying to escape in two different ways, and I ran it clean. My players probably don't believe that, but I did run it clean, and one of them got away and one didn't. But the one who didn't, the half-orc jumped out of a tower and went, "I'll be fine at the bottom of this. I'll still have one hit point," to keep the pursuit alive, and got his man. The other one was an absolute nail-biting snatch fest, as every trick in the book was deployed to give this kind of ninja character a chance of getting away from the players, and it was by a hair's breadth and a dice roll. And if they'd caught them, honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do. So, so the
probably for the best.
Mechanical stuff is fine in principle, but if you absolutely need to have someone get away to keep some of your show on the road, then maybe a little hand waving is maybe you can indulge. They'll never know, right? They'll never find you out. They'll never listen to a podcast.
Absolutely.
They'll never look behind the
All right,
GM screen.
If any of the issues raised in this podcast have affected you, you can contact us at party@theadventuringparty.net, or on our Discord, or on our social media, or on our YouTube, or on many other places that we find ourselves. But, in the meantime, consider outfitting all of your NPCs with the cyanide tooth. For the moment, this party's over.
You've been listening to The Adventuring Party. We're a ragtag collective of desperate souls, striving for truth in a world of tabletop gone mad. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. You can email us at party@theadventuringparty.net. Although, between you and me, the best place to track us down is Discord. Check the show notes for a link. This podcast released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, which is like free, but with extra steps. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week.
Excellent.
They just go Hail Hydra and bite down.
Mick, the sign you held up there was a great idea. Unfortunately, your stream was so low quality at the time that I saw blurry rubbish.
I need to fill it in.
What the heck is that?
I need to fill it in, so it's black. I'll do that now. I wrote it backwards as well, so you could read it. So I'm very happy with that.
And it's showing up as backwards for us as well.
Can you read it the right way, yeah?
Wrap ups.
Wrap up question mark, yeah.
Grant.
So that's
right.
okay.